The information that I shared with you in our first workshop is stuff I've been living with for over a year as I've been navigating through this grant. What I'm sharing with you here is really brand new. So I've not put this in any formal form yet, other than we've talked about it on our podcast. So as I'm sharing it with you, I want you to just be aware that some of this is new to me as well. And so I'm going to refer to my notes a little bit more than I might not normally. Let me start by saying this. This is not an attempt to talk negatively about technology. We would not be where we are in our world today and in our personal lives if it were not for technology. You don't realize how much you appreciate it until you are in a place like Tanzania where it's not available to you. And while there's some freedom of being away from it for a while, there's also a reassurance that, I enjoyed being able to get to my hotel last night by following my GPS and not having to pull out a map and trying to figure things out like I used to. There's just some advantages of that. But one of the things that we've discovered is there are lots of issues with technology that we need to be aware of. And so again, this is not to talk negatively about technology. It is the recognition that knowledge is power. And the more we know and understand, the more we are capable of making decisions for our families that will be healthy. And sometimes in order to do this well, we need the support of the church and other families in the church that are going to kind of take the same positions on some of the stances that we're going to make. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you a lot of things that we have learned from this book, Screen Kids. And if you find this helpful, I've got 2 copies of that book I'd like to give away at the end of our session. But Screen Kids, written by Gary Chapman. You may recognize him as the 5 love languages guy. And Arlene Pelicane, which I have recently become friends with. We just completed a podcast with her, and she's going to be doing a webinar on May 2nd that I'm going to invite you to be a part of, free webinar, where she's going to talk about the 5 skills you need as a parent to set good boundaries when it comes to technology with your kids. Okay? So we'll talk about some of that. So again, the purpose of our conversation today, if I have a clicker, is to equip us with knowledge, not to shame us for the use of the curriculum or the use of technology or the way we've allowed it to be used, and then to think about the purpose of technology in our homes, and then design a media plan that will accomplish the goals that we want to set for our kids. Okay, so as you will notice, you got a little more work this workshop, right? So there's a lot of fill in the blanks there on the sheet. The lady who designed all this for me asked me, do you want me to just give them information or you want to make them work? I said, let's make them work. So she designed it that way. So hopefully we'll get through all this and it might keep me on task as well. That's right. And now, I have to say that the last workshop wasn't on me. It was on them. Because you all asked lots of questions, which is really good. I always tell my students, I have no problem not getting to all the material that I cover if you have questions. And we were able to answer those. And even if it takes us on a rabbit trail, if it's information you want to know and you're excited about it, then I'm happy to go there. So anyway. So here's some of the things that we have found. Kids under 9 years old using mobile devices. In 2011, 52% of kids under 9 had access to mobile devices. In 2017, when this study ended, 6 years later, it's 98%. 98% of kids under the age of 9 have access to technology. Okay? For 13 to 7-year-olds, in 2018, 89% of them had a smartphone. 70% use social media multiple times a day. 54% of them, when they were asked, say that their phone is a distraction from people that they are with. In other words, they'd rather be on their phone than be with the people that they're actually in the room with. And 42% say it takes away time they could spend with their friends. In other words, they're at home in their room when they could be out with their friends. 42. So this is 13 to 17-year-olds making the self-assessment. So probably most of them are not being honest, right? Yeah.
That's 100% of adults and
Yeah, that's probably true. Okay, so what do the experts have to say? This I found absolutely fascinating. Okay, so Steve Jobs, late founder, co-founder, and former CEO of Apple, in response to a question about his kids using the newly released iPad that his company had just released. This is his response: "They haven't used it. We limit how much technology our kids use at home." Steve Jobs, the founder of technology, basically, when it comes right down to it, right, said, "I limit how much my kids have," and they've not even used the iPad yet. Okay? Evan Williams, founder of Twitter, bought hundreds of books for his 2 sons, but refused to buy them iPads. Chris Anderson, former editor of Wired, which is a technology magazine, and father of 5, did not allow his kids to have iPads, calling them gaming crack. Okay, so that's just iPads that these are talking about. But I think we can make a more general assessment of just screens in general. Okay? So why are screens a topic of concern? Well, there's some things that are very, very interesting about the way that most technology, in particular things like video games, even things like Netflix. Do you remember the day that we would turn on the television and we would watch a half an hour show? We'd have a commercial in the middle, which is when we would run and get our snacks or whatever, right? Use a bathroom. And then we come back and there'd be a commercial at the end as the show ends. And then we had a decision to make. Either we leave the channel on and watch the next show, we change the channel to another show, or we turn the TV off. I mean, we have those things. That doesn't exist anymore. Because as soon as one show is over, the next show begins. Okay? So one of the things that they've discovered is there's no stopping cues anymore. So when a kid watches a YouTube video, as soon as that video is over, another YouTube video comes up, oftentimes having nothing to do with the YouTube video they were watching. And oftentimes something that we might not be real comfortable with as parents, because that's just the next cue that is set up. And so literally kids can, or teens or whoever, us as adults, can sit there and watch over and over and over without any natural stopping point. We have to decide to stop. Well, kids can't make that decision. And so they just keep watching. Okay? Netflix is set up this way, right? As soon as a Netflix movie is over, the next one queues up. Do any of you know what Mountain Men is? Have you seen that show? It's so funny. Okay. It's a show from the History Channel. It's about these guys that live off the grid, like in Alaska and Montana and things like that. And I'm just fascinated by it. But I have found that, so what happens is the show ends, and then there's like a 15-second like countdown, and the next episode begins. No commercials. And you can just keep going. Yes.
The other thing is you don't know what time it is. Like you don't know how long you've been there. Because when you were watching shows in the other days, you knew that show went from 8 to 8:30. And then, and you think, okay, after the next show I'll go to bed. But when you're streaming, because we've just started streaming in the last year, I've realized there's no time. So you just go to the next episode and you don't know that it's...
You leave the room and you realize it's dark outside.
Yeah.
It wasn't dark when I went in the room.
I'm going to bed now and I didn't even realize, I'm watching the time it is, I don't know that it's time to go to bed.
Yeah. So, that's one thing. It provides unpredictable rewards. So, every game that our kids play, video games and things, are designed that when you first start it, it's really easy to accomplish the task. And then you get some kind of reward, a ding, an extra life, something that you get, all right? And then as you start playing the game, the way you get the reward is more difficult. all right? And there's something about getting that reward, getting 3 stars instead of 1 star. You know, it's ridiculous stuff. They're not actually getting anything. But what it's doing is it's pumping up the dopamine in their brain, is the way I understand it, and that satisfaction part of our brain. And so why would I stop if I'm continuing to get satisfaction, a sense of fulfillment from it? And then in a similar way, it taps into the power of goals, this idea that you get streaks going. So like, make sure you play today because you've been doing it for 10 consecutive days and you get extra rewards for consecutive play. And so you jump back in again because I don't want to lose my place in my game and then I have to kind of start backwards and I lose all the rewards that I've earned up to this point and that kind of thing. Okay? So there's these built-in incentives in the games that make the kids addictive to them. Okay? Do the same thing for us. So this isn't just a kid thing, all right? So this is, I don't know, what Duolingo. Yeah. So I'm doing Duolingo right now. I am on, so, because I'm working on my Swahili. So I am like 62 days. I have 62 days. And even this morning I thought, oh, my streak. I don't want to lose it because, well, it just makes it harder. So I got on this morning and did my lesson for today because I didn't want to skip because I didn't know if I was going to have time with all this going on. So I did it this morning real quick. It told me what to do. It dictated my life. Okay, I feel like I'm a fairly responsible adult. So imagine what it's like for kids. Right? Okay. Duolingo is a great example. What do you have on your phone? What do you play when you are sitting at the doctor waiting for your appointment? Or what do you do?
Wordle.
Wordle?
Is a nice
Okay.
one because there's one word a day and you can't do more.
Okay. All right.
But there is a Wordle app, and you can play over and over and over.
I haven't done that, so stay away from that.
Yeah. So we have our thing. All right. Nobody goes into the restroom anymore with a book. Right? Okay, I won't say any more about that. Okay, bottom line. Here's a great question that the authors of this book ask. Is screen time bringing your family closer together or is it driving it farther apart? If we start with that question and then work backwards, I think it's a great place to begin. Is the technology used in our family helping us grow together as a family? Or is it causing us, while in the same room, to all 4 of us be isolated, doing our thing? Okay? This is being a college professor these days is a fascinating thing. We leave the classroom. So I've got a policy in my classroom: no phones. So from the time they enter the door to the time they leave through the door, phones are not allowed in the classroom. And every once in a while, I'll say, I'll make a reference to a scripture, and I'll say, let's look this up together, and you can use your phone. And they're like, yes, and then I make them put it away because they're going through withdrawals. Yeah. What if someone texts me? It'll be 30 minutes before I can respond or know what they said. But it's fascinating to watch students walking down the sidewalk from one building to the next with earbuds in and phones in their hands, and they're all walking together, not interacting at all with each other. And it's very sad, really. Or being in the cafeteria watching a table of 4 students eating together and all of them on their phones. And have you heard this thing where you text a person next to you?
So people don't hear your conversation.
I guess. Or is it, one of the things that I'm discovering working with kids and teenagers is they don't know how to have a conversation with people anymore. Because everything's about text. They don't know how to actually look eye to eye with an adult and talk to people. I'll have students sit in my office. Of course, I've got a no phone policy in my office as well. And I'll have students sit in my office and talk to me with their head down. It's like, what has happened? Okay. I told you I wasn't going to bash technology. And I'm not. That's not the intent here. So all of this first part is just to give you information, okay? So parents, how many hours do your kids, ages 4 to 17, spend using electronic devices in a typical day? From 0 to 5 hours, 77% of parents said, my kid is on technology between 0 and 5 hours a day. 12% said 6 to 11 hours a day. 11% said 11 hours or more a day my kids are on technology. Okay? The average is more than 4.5 hours a day. The average child, teen, 4 to 17 years old, spends 4.5 hours a day on technology. Okay, here's the same situation only by age. So under age 2, 42 minutes a day. Under age 2, 42 minutes a day on technology. I couldn't believe that when I first saw that. 42 minutes a day? 2-year-olds? Wow. Okay.
You're watching Bluey, to be fair.
That's true. That's true.
Grandpa.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when we talk about screens, we're talking all screens, right? Television included. Okay? 2 to 4 years old, 2 hours, 40 minutes. 5 to 8, 2 hours, 40 minutes. Okay?
Does that include what they do in school?
No, this is outside of school. Yeah.
I would assume though for the other one, it says a typical weekday. That's got to include the school, which is why it would be higher because they're on their Chromebooks all the time.
I don't think so because this is a survey of parents, so they're not going to know how long they're on stuff. This is mostly at home.
You think it was
Yeah,
just
this
outside of
is
school day?
outside of school. Yeah.
Unless it was like an online, they go to online school or something. Like I'm thinking that 11 plus hours, that has to be
It has to include their school, otherwise
Yeah.
they wouldn't be
an
sleeping.
online school day.
Well, that's part of the issue.
I do know some kids stay
Right.
late.
I mean, the truth is we have teenagers and maybe kids that from the time they're out of school until they fall asleep with their phone in their hand,
Yeah.
they're on technology.
And if they're taking their phone upstairs or their tablet upstairs and you think they're asleep, they may not be.
Yeah.
But can I also push back on this, Dr. Blanchette? Like, the reality is, you mentioned this in the last session, which is your kids look at your actions more than your words.
Yeah.
Like, as much as you said those stats, they're orders of magnitude worse for adults.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Even worse, we're demonstrating it. Like, we have
Absolutely.
had to implement, there's no technology in it. We're not doing it. It's not happening. We have little kids so we can get away with it, but it's like, we gotta start now. Because if,
Yeah.
if I don't say I'm not gonna be on my phone, I will be on my phone at dinner.
Yeah. So that's a really good point. So we spent a whole episode on our podcast talking about things that parents can do to help their kids. And then at the very end we said, okay, now parents, you realize in order to do all the things you just said your kids have to do, you have to do it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think there's ways to redeem it. So I have a Snapchat streak with my daughter, right? She's a freshman in college. You know what that means? I get a picture of her face or what she's doing almost every single day.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that streak.
Absolutely.
I'm grateful that's a motivator for her, right? It's the power of that goal. But I also have to do all the same things that Mike is saying, right? When I'm with her, tell her to put her phone away. I always used to say to her, put down your phone. Your phone doesn't love you. Talk to your mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's definitely ways to redeem this. We're going to hopefully get to some of those. But an example of that is I was actually, this is rather ironic. I was reading the book. In fact, I'll just read it to you. I've got a note that I wrote myself at the very beginning of my book. So I was reading this while I was visiting my grandkids. And I have a 5-year-old granddaughter and a 6-year-old grandson. Both of them have their own tablets. Their mom's a children's pastor. So I'm hoping she's going to read the book and listen to the podcast and all the stuff. So I wrote, how ironic that while I am reading the intro to this book, my granddaughter is playing on her tablet. But that trip, I had just started my Duolingo, getting ready for our Africa trip. And so I'm sitting there on the couch. My grandson's playing on his tablet. I'm on my phone with Duolingo. And he says, Papa, what are you doing? And I said, I'm doing Duolingo. He says, what's that? And I said, I'm learning Swahili. You want to learn Swahili with me? Yes. So I don't know how if you know how Duolingo works, but it does different things. But one of the things is it'll say it out loud, and then there'll be words at the bottom, and you have to kind of put the words up, right? And so he's listening, and he's like putting the words up, and not doing a great job, but putting the words up, and we're doing this together. And then I said, and then his mom at that point must have looked something up on the internet and found out that Duolingo actually has reading skills for kids based on your reading ability, that you can tell it what your kid's age is and reading ability, and it'll actually read them a book, and then they have to read the book themselves, and they do little things where the kids interact with it. So they're learning how to read. And I said, you want to do Duolingo with Papa, and we'll set it up on and you can do your own. And so we set it up on his tablet, and then we were doing it together. So if technology is to be used, one of the best ways to do it is to do it together. Do something with technology that you can do together. So the issue with technology is that it's separating us. That's one of the issues. So if we can find ways to do things together, they're healthy. So,
say something about
yes.
Duolingo, 'cause I'm
Yes.
almost to 1,000 days on my
Oh,
streak.
you have a streak of 1,000 days?
Almost.
Wow. That's impressive. What language are you working on?
Spanish.
Spanish. Okay, good.
Because some teachers asked me about it, and so I know a teacher that works at a Catholic school, and they're not allowed to use Duolingo because there are a lot of men who are wearing dresses and girlfriends and boyfriends. So they a lot of answers like that. So you do have to be
As far as the reading part or for the language learning?
for the language learning.
I've not I must not be far enough along because I've not come across any of that yet.
But I'm always, or maybe it's just the Spanish, I don't know. But
Okay.
they're always, the boy character is talking about his boyfriend.
Okay.
And,
Yeah, okay. I've not come across any of that, but that's good to know.
Because Swahili might.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would not be acceptable, would it?
Right?
Yes. Okay, so here are things that our authors said that kids need. They need at least 60 minutes a day of physical activity for a healthy child. No more than 2 hours of recreational screen time a day. And they need 9 to 11 hours of sleep. And these two things often conflict with each other. Okay? So one of the things that they say, and this may come up later, I don't remember if I've got it later in my notes, but one of the things that they recommend is that your child's bedroom become a screen-free zone. Never screens are allowed in the bedroom for any reason. So that keeps them from getting on websites that they shouldn't be on, that they may come across by accident or intentionally. It also keeps them from trying to go to bed with it. One of the other things that has been done, and I don't know if you are aware of this, but the light that comes up on a screen is designed to simulate daytime. So the colors that are used are to create daytime. So if you are in your bed at night playing on your screen, it is creating for your brain, it's telling your brain it's day, not night. And so sleep becomes more difficult. It takes longer to get to a point where you can get restful sleep. I found that really fascinating. That's an intentional thing by the designers of our screens, that it stimulates daytime. Okay? All right. And this information, by the way, is from this ABCD group, and this is 4,500 participants in the research they did for that. Okay, areas of impact that we need to consider. All right, some good news and some bad news. And this is where I'm going to need my notes because I'm not as up to date on this. Okay, I'm not going to be thorough on any of these. We have a podcast on each one of these. Okay, so if you want more detail, I recommend you go to that podcast. But here are a few things. And some of you, based on your own training and what you do for a living, things you may have more insight into some of this than I do. But the effects on the brain. And I'm going to talk about some things I don't understand. I'm just going to tell you what it says, and I don't understand it all, okay? There's a premature thinning of the cortex in the brain. And that thinning has an impact on exercising of your five senses. Your five senses are not exercised like they should be. It functions as a permanent pacifier, meaning that it becomes addictive. All right? It stimulates brain chemistry changes. And it is a direct attack on our sleep patterns. Okay, so those are some of the brain things. The good news is that if we monitor it well, sleep can actually be increased if we take that. So do you remember the example I gave you of the mom who gave her kids like an hour and a half prior to bedtime? Okay, part of that is helping their brain know it is time to move toward this kind of rest. Okay, so by eliminating screens prior to bedtime creates an opportunity for better rest. So the standard that they say is a minimum of an hour before bedtime, no screens. So, I just know my pattern, okay? So my wife's an early sleeper. She's an early getter-upper. I tend to stay up later and get up early. Not as early as her, but early. But I've started going to bed earlier. But my day is such that, I almost hate to admit this, especially since it's being recorded. My day is such that I need brain rest because I'm going all day. And so brain rest for me is sitting in front of the TV and vegetating, watching Mountain Men or whatever it is, okay? And then from there I go to bed. Usually as I start to get tired, I go to bed. Well, what they're telling me is I really should have an hour without that. To really give my brain the opportunity to get the rest it needs, go without the screen for an hour to get the best that we can get. So that's just something to be aware of for our kids. Okay, in relationships, one of the things that we discovered in relationships, and again, I'm just kind of quickly moving through these. Screens make me me-centered. Becomes about me. And as we've talked about, relationships become difficult. The longer I'm on screens, the harder it is for me to talk to people, to build relationships. The screen doesn't talk back to me. It doesn't call me names. I don't have to get in fights with it. It's easier for me to have a screen than to have real friends. And so they don't learn empathy. And friendships are difficult. And so what do? We have 500 friends on Facebook who become our community. And we don't really know any of them, or maybe a few of them we know. But that fills this need that we have in us, and none of it's real. Okay, so that's the bad news. The good news is it can actually help introverted and extroverted kids deal with some of their issues. The American Academy for Pediatrics, how did I get there? Did I go there by accident? I did, but it was the right place. These are interesting things that they have to say about screens, okay? Make sure it does not take place of adequate sleep, physical activity, or other behaviors necessary for health. This is not a Christian organization, by the way. This is just people who are concerned about kids, all right? Designate media-free time and media-free locations, such as bedrooms. We've already mentioned that. So I found this interesting, media-free times. So the idea of, okay, while I'm cooking dinner, you can be on your iPad, and as soon as it's time for dinner, we're done with the iPad for the night. Of course, that's probably homework time, so maybe that doesn't work very well, but this is what they recommend, and this is pretty severe compared to, I think, what most families have done. Under 18 months, they should have no media, period, including sitting them in front of TV watching Bluey, okay? 18 months and younger, nothing as far as screens. 18 months to 2 years, high quality programming only with an adult. So Bluey, if you consider that high quality programming, I don't know if that's considered high quality programming, but they don't do it as a way of entertaining them while you're busy doing something else. You're doing it with them. According to the APA, under 2 years old should never have screens on their own, by themselves for any reason. Should always be with a parent. Okay? 2 to 5 years old, 1 hour of high quality programming with an adult. Again, this is not a Christian organization that's worried about their spiritual nurture. This is just this organization is concerned about who they are as people. Okay, 2 to 5 years old, 1 hour high quality programming with an adult. 6 years and older, and I would say this is up through childhood, so older is up to about 12. Place consistent limits and then stick to it as a parent. Under no circumstances are those limits to be broken. Whether that's you get 2 hours, and here's the 2 hour slot each day that you get. It's not before bed, whatever. Those limits are for you. Okay? So that's the APA. All right. So that then leads to, this didn't take nearly as long as I thought it might. This leads to the podcast I mentioned to you. And I'd like to do something a little aggressive with you. If you think there's any interest that you would do this podcast, I want you to take out your phones now, and I'm going to give you time to sign up. Okay? There's the link. I'm sorry? Yes, I know. Take out your phones on this screen time workshop. You can go either to that QR code, or you can go to centerff.com, which is our website, and there's a place there. And you will really, Arlene is a delight. I told you we interviewed her for our podcast last week. It'll air in 2 weeks, the recording we did with her. And she is extremely relational, very competent. You can tell she's done a lot of work. She's been working on this project for about 10 years. And she really knows her stuff. And it's free. And the other thing you can do, this is hilarious and I'm going to say this. The other thing you can do is you can put a link on your social media to this as well for all your friends. Okay, so if you have Facebook or whatever, put that on there. It's free. We're hoping to get a bunch of people a part of it because we think it'll be really, really helpful. So 5 skills every child needs in a tech-driven world. And they're going to be very, very practical.
Do you know, because sometimes they do this, will there be a recording of it?
Yes.
And then they'll send it to you afterwards in case
Yes,
it's free?
there will be.
Is this appropriate for non-Christian friends?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So, now that that's said, let me tell you about an article that my wife happened to see and forwarded to me Thursday?
Yeah, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah, the 16th. What day was that? Okay, so it's, Wednesday or so. Anybody know Jonathan Haidt?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Smart. He's an atheist, but he's really, really smart. And he understands people really, really well. He just came out with a book called The Anxious Generation: how the great rewiring of childhood is causing an epidemic of mental illness. Now, this guy doesn't just say stuff. He researches like crazy. All right? You can be confident that the research he has done is done correctly. Okay? So, just a couple thoughts from what he says in the article. He argues that kids should have little or no access to smartphones or social media until they're 16. This is how serious it is for him. He says the mental illness in our world today is a result of screens. Or if not the result, at least screens are a significant contributor. Here are, let's see. He just gives lots of stats. I don't know that that'll be helpful to us. But he does, in typical Jonathan Haidt style, has some norms that will solve this crisis, which is really great. It's a lot of people like to say the sky's falling and not give you any answers on how to keep it up in the air. So this is what he says. No smartphones before high school. We must clear them out of middle school and elementary school. Just let kids have a flip phone or a phone watch when they become independent. Okay? So they have access to an emergency device, but not something they can use, right? No social media until 16. This is number 2. No social media until 16. These platforms were not made for children. They appear to be especially harmful for children. We must especially protect early puberty since that is when the greatest damage is done. And number 3 is phone-free schools. There's really no argument for letting kids have the greatest distraction device ever invented in their pockets during school hours. If they have the phones, they will be texting during class and they will be focused on their phones. If they don't have phones, they will listen to their teachers and spend time with other kids. What a novelty idea. And then number 4 is more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. We need to roll back the phone-based childhood and restore the play-based childhood. So it's a really interesting article. You can find it on the CNN website if you're interested in reading the article. As soon as I saw this, I immediately ordered his book. Again, the book is An Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness.
And they did a study of the students, I think that they were just all of that students, a survey of all of that students, and they said something like 70% are anxious and depressed. 70% of the students
Yeah.
at all of that.
Yeah, so there's another recent study that was done. I thought I had it in here. Apparently I don't. Maybe it's here. It had to do with, oh no, it's in these notes. It had to do with the generation. So current kids, their grandparents, which probably would have been, World War II? Teenagers today, their grandparents would have been about World War II people? Age, my age? No, before that. It was in the next great-grandparents, right? Okay. So college students, grandparents, this study was done like since 1985, and it's been an ongoing study of the last 3 generations, that kids today are 6 times more likely to have mental illness than their grandparents. Which is probably not a surprise based on what we've seen. But the question becomes why? I mean, for a lot of people who grew up in the 50s and 60s, life wasn't always easy. And our kids today have everything. I think about Yeah, I know. I think about my friends in Tanzania. I never hear them talk about depression. I mean, these are people living in poverty. So these are people who live on $1.19 a day is the average income for a Tanzanian. $1.19 a day, average income for an adult. Okay. When I think of, now, obviously they live in a different world than we do, but still, $1.19 a day to try to live on. They have no mental health crisis in Tanzania. And it raises those questions. What, I'm not a psychologist. I don't know the answer to those questions. But everything I'm hearing is that screens are having a significant impact on some of the issues that we're seeing in our world today. Okay, so I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions you have. I don't know that I can answer all the questions, but I'll do my best.
Well, just from what we know about brain development, you know, a child who hears more than one language will be better suited to speak more than one
Correct.
language. Right? So they're growing the dendrites and the synapses, right? And a child who's on a screen is constantly at that startle stage, as well as the built-in rewards, you know, constant getting rewarded. And then when you don't have it,
Yeah.
well, that kind of leads to anxiety and depression.
Yeah. I watch.
It's growing too much in certain areas in the brain.
Yeah. I watch my grandkids, especially my grandson, when his mom tells him to turn the tablet off. And the fit he has in response to that. So one of the things that Terry and I started doing is, you know, it's hard to parent your children when they have their own children. So I still deal with stuff from my own mom, who's trying to fix stuff about the way I do things. And so we're learning as grandparents, you can only say so much and do so much. So every once in a while I drop a hint, talk about the podcast we're doing and stuff with her. But one of the things we've started doing is we have found, are you familiar with the cooperative games that are available now? It's this new, fairly new thing, I think. It's fairly new. These are games, board games, that you do not as a competitor with the person you're playing with, but you have to work together to accomplish a common goal. So the probably most famous one, I think, common one out right now is called Outfoxed. Anybody familiar with this? Okay, so basically it's a simple board with playing cards, and the cards are characters. And it's the same character dressed differently. Okay, and you put 4 on each side of the board face down, and they're all thieves. And the fox is on the board, and the fox is trying to get from one side of the board to the other side of the board. Fox is the bad guy. Trying to get from one side of the board to the other side of the board. And you roll the dice, and you get clues as to what you roll. And with these clues, you can turn over thieves, and based on what they're wearing, you can say, oh, this one might be the thief because he's got a red scarf on, or this one's definitely not the thief because it's carrying a cane. So we eliminate that one. And then you keep doing this, but if you roll a bad roll, then the fox moves. And so you're trying to figure out the thief before the fox gets across the board. And my grandkids absolutely love this game. And to watch them encourage each other, come on, Zoe, you can roll, the right one, as Cooper's encouraging her. It's just amazing to watch this. And I watch that, and then I watch the isolation that takes place when they get on their tablets. And so we're kind of at a point that, like, every time we visit, we're gonna bring another game. So they've got 3 of them now. We just started doing this recently.
They have shelves full of games that I have played exponentially with them, but we have 3 cooperative games now as part of
the competitive games, Scrabble and not Scrabble.
They do not.
Not Scrabble. Trouble, that's what I'm thinking of. Trouble, sorry, those kinds of games. And they get mad when they lose. So usually we play till everybody's a winner. We have a first winner, a second winner, a third winner, a fourth winner, kind of thing.
My son just changes the rules.
Or change the rules in the middle.
And we have
Yeah.
the cooperative ones, but he thinks it's funny to go against
Oh.
sometimes.
Oh, okay.
We're trying to do together. And he's like,
That's
"No,
awesome.
I'm going to go the other way.
That's
because
fun.
We're not going to get
Yeah, but you're doing it together either way,
We are.
right? Yeah, and so I think that's a big part of this. So, this is, I almost hesitated in sharing this with you today because I'm still learning about this. And, when you speak in workshops, you're supposed to know what you're talking about. So I'm still learning, but I just find a lot of this fascinating, and I was unaware. I mean, I knew a little, just intuitively, that there were some issues going on here, but the more I've looked into this, the more I'm concerned about it. So in the webinar, Arlene is going to give us some guidance on how to set limits, how to address the temper tantrums that we have. She says in the book, I don't think I could find it, but she says in the book something about when you take a stand, don't expect that your kids are going to come to you and say, "Oh, I'm so glad you have limited me on how long I can play on my phone." But just stand your ground because it's worth the stance that you take. And the other thing that she recommended on our podcast was that you find other families in your church that are willing to take the same stand. Because what the kids are going to do is they're going to come back and say, "But all my friends." And you're going to say, "Well, that's fine, but I'm not the parent of all your friends. I'm your parent. And I care about you more than your friends' parents care about you. And so this is what we're going to do." But it helps to have other families who, when my kids go after church to visit with your family, that we know that the standards are going to be the same, and we can support each other when our kids cause issue, cause a problem for us. Yeah. Yes.
I've been involved in the past with some parent education and healthy discipline and things like that, and something that was a real game changer for me as a parent. We only found it when our daughter was 6 and our son was like 8, but it was called 1, 2, 3 Magic. It's a DVD, a video, and just how to put healthy discipline in place. And there's just some concepts from that really apply here, such as our kids are not little adults. They are growing in maturity. They are mature, and so it's not a democracy. Hopefully it's a loving authority, but it's not a democracy.
Yeah.
And he said too many parents are scared of their kids.
Yeah.
Like they're scared of their kids' disapproval.
Right.
And so he suggests these limits on, behaviors that there's just an appropriate consequence if they follow it, and if an appropriate consequence if they don't follow it. And he said we use too many words and usually too much emotion, which is usually anger. And that just hit me right here.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
that's me.
Yeah.
And then now we're in an argument, and we said, you can't be in an argument with your kids.
Yeah.
It's here it is, and if you push it, well then he uses a method for what he calls stop behavior. The nagging, the arguing, those types of things. That's a 1, that's a 2. We get to a 3. You get your a timeout or a timeout alternative.
Yeah.
And then you just don't preach at your kids. Now they're back to clean slate. But I think it's this thing too. If you're saying, okay, your hour and a half is up, put away your phones, and they start pushing back. That might be that's a 1, that's a 2. We get to a 3. There's a consequence.
Yeah.
Or more severe behaviors, you go right to a consequence. But rather than getting in that, trying to convince your kids that it's good, tell a 2-year-old why they shouldn't have a Twinkie 15 minutes before dinner, or why they shouldn't play in the middle of the road. They're not little adults.
Right. Right.
Think, oh, that makes a lot of sense. You could have 15 good reasons. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So it's like here's a rule.
That's good.
And you follow it, and positive consequences. You don't, and there's a negative one. It's not excessive, but they begin to learn. And not do that push-up.
Yeah. I think the hard thing about screens is we went into this innocently. We wanted our kids to be up with what's going on in the world. We wanted them to be tech savvy. We didn't want them to be behind in the advancement in technology. And so I think we just did it with no thought that there is a problem with doing this. After all, our kids having a phone, if, in a dangerous world, it's a way they can be safe. They can contact us in a moment if they need to, if there's an issue. And, if they're staying at someone's house and there's a problem, they can call us and we can come get them. They have immediate access to us. Those kinds of things.
But I think that's a concept, like, yes, 100% yes, but also, how do we teach our kids how to struggle, right? Like, I don't want to solve every problem that my daughter is going
Right.
to face, right? And a phone is an instant lifeline out of there. I don't have to think through this myself. I don't have to do it myself. And, I mean, my daughter's older, so I get that it's a different thing, but how are we as parents teaching them to lean in, to struggle, to persevere?
Yeah. Again, I think goes back to the protection thing that we talked about a little bit earlier. We've, for whatever reason, okay, so you all know that, and again, I'm probably not the right person to talk about this because I just know just enough about it, but that there are family cycles through generations, right? So we were raised a particular way and we're going to react to that way that we were raised. Either we're going to raise our kids the same way or we're going to likely go the opposite, right? And then and we're in this cycle where, for whatever reason, the current generations have said we want our kids to have everything they could possibly have. We want to provide as much for them as we can. We want them to not, I'm sorry?
It's no longer helicopter parenting. It's
Yeah,
plow
right,
parenting.
right.
Everything
That's right.
your way.
Yeah, and we want, life to be easy for them and everything. And we don't understand that a seed has to break through the shell in order for it to be healthy and grow, right? If you break the shell open for it, it's not going to do it. So, I don't know what the answer is to that. I don't know if this thought that just popped into my mind is helpful or not, but I'm at the age, I don't know how many of you are dealing with this, where you get posts every once in a while on Facebook of like things that you did when you were a kid, like drinking out of the hose, playing with lawn darts, driving down, standing on your bike seat, driving down downhill, kind of a thing. Sitting, my parents, my grandparents or my parents, I don't even know, had a station wagon with a back-facing seat. Do you remember these? And I remember standing up back there, making faces at people behind us and stuff, and drinking out of the hose. I was like, we drank out of those, and we survived, right? We survived. So I think those are always funny. But the truth is, we lived and we came. There are. Oh, this is something I heard recently. The amount of broken bones in children is almost nil. That hospitals report they don't see any kids with broken bones anymore. And because they're not outside doing stuff that's risky. They're not jumping out of trees or jumping off the roof. Yeah. And that a sign of healthy kids is hospitals reporting high numbers of broken bones. I just thought that was fascinating. Don't know exactly, I don't think I want to throw kids out there and have them break their bones, but and I think that's part of the issue. We've protected them from all of the life of a child. And maybe for me, that's the biggest thing here. If I can get my kids off of screens, that means they have to find something else to do. And hopefully the something else to do will be outside. And I realize the safety in our world is different than it used to be. I mean, I could be gone all day during the summer.
It's actually more safe now. That's what no one talks about.
Oh, overall it's more safe? Just because of all the things we have in place? Yeah. But I remember I could go out and be gone all day. I knew that if I got myself into trouble, that one of my friend's parents would let my mom know. So I knew not to get into trouble. I think we probably still did. But, we'd terrorize.
Kind of trouble, right?
I'm sorry, what?
We had a different kind of trouble.
Yes, right.
Right?
Yeah.
You got a broken bone, you jumped off things you shouldn't have jumped off, you climbed up things you,
Yeah, stole a candy bar from the local grocery store.
Yeah, not, I've said something on the internet that's going to now make somebody mad, or I posted something on the internet that I can't get back.
Yeah.
And I've given some part of myself away.
Yeah.
It was a different kind of trouble.
Yeah.
Jonathan Haidt, actually, in a different book, talks about the term is free-range parenting.
Yeah.
Come back now because the world's actually, especially in America, is safer. People don't talk about that. It's like childhood abductions is down significantly.
Yeah, what's his latest book?
Well, the latest book is the one you.
Yeah, but in the one before that,
The
because it's really good.
Coddling of the American Mind.
Okay. Yeah, I've not read it yet, but I have a professor friend who told me I need to read it.
Yeah, and that I think is the one where he talks about free range.
Okay. All right. Well,
Leon,
yes.
if you are a grandparent or you have influence in other children's lives, remember that their parents are tired and busy. And so you can be that person that plays games with them, takes them on a bike ride, takes them outside to play ball, because their parents are tired and busy. So like when we go to see our little grandkids, we make a point of doing those kinds of things because, I remember when I'd come home, had to make dinner, they had to do homework, we had to, go to piano or whatever it was, and you're tired. So if you have influence on someone else's life, that you can go in and be the one to take the kids and do these things, then do it, because something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And so, take those opportunities to play those cooperative games or whatever.
So here's
I think that's
go
what
ahead.
we experience in Tanzania, Wayne. Because back in Africa, we have this saying that a child is being raised up by the whole community,
Yeah.
not just one family. So when you go back home, you'll find kids all over the place that they're just roaming all over the place, and then they go play whatever they play with people they don't even know. But it's because it's there in the same community, everyone is making sure that this child has to grow up the right way. And if you mess around, that's someone has to put you in the right
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah.
And you
They
cannot,
do.
and you cannot even tell your parents about it, because if you tell them, you're in trouble again.
Yeah.
So
Well,
Yeah.
that's part of, we don't know our neighbors,
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
And so, and like for us, our next door neighbors don't have children even. So he'd have to go a long ways
Yeah.
by himself to find the nearest kids, and we just live very separate.
Mm-hmm.
Versus it used to be, yes, the kids just terrorized the neighborhood and ran around, but now we
Yeah.
kind of stay
Yeah.
in our homes and don't.
And that's why the community of faith is so critical. Yeah. Play an important role in that journey. Well, what I hope for you for today is that for this conversation is that you're a little more aware, you have a little more knowledge of some of the issues that might be at stake, and that you can begin determining what our home or the kids I have influence over, what our boundaries will be. And, I think going cold turkey is probably unfair. Okay, we're just getting rid of all the technology, and you can't be on screens at all. As Jonathan Haidt says, under 16 shouldn't have any access to social media or phones. I think that's probably really hard once we've already gone there. But I think there are some boundaries that we can set. I think some of the real important ones are no phones in the bedroom. I think that's or media at all in the bedroom. I think that's a really important one, especially for children. No phones at the table. I think so. When dinner time, all the media gets put away, and then of course no phones during bedtime. Of course, if they're not in the room, that's not a problem. I think if we can just do those kinds of things, and then just be aware of the limitations that we're putting on other times, that would serve us well. And then we have to be a little more intentional to be active with them and not use screens as a babysitter. I think that's the big thing. All right. So thank you for taking your Saturday to come and be part of this. Okay, so I don't know how to do this. I've got 2 copies of Screen Kids. Is there anybody that just really would like this? You want to investigate more of this? This would be really helpful to you. You'll read it, that kind of thing. Anybody who would just like them? Okay. All right. And you could pass them around too. Anybody else that would like the other copy?
Anybody after I'm done with it.
I teach single moms with kids.
Great. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, and then if you've not signed up for the webinar, I encourage you to do that. I said I was going to give you time to do that, and then I didn't. So thank you all. Yeah, I'll leave this up in case you want.